Hey everybody. A quick note before starting today's episode. I've given it a lot of thought, and I think that come April 7th, with the release of the 50th episode of Psychotropic, I'm going to be putting it down for a little while. There's a lot of reasons that contribute to this decision, but I think the main one is that, at least for me, Psychotropic did what I wanted it to do. And while I enjoy making these episodes, I'd like to be able to step back for a second, reanalyze what I'm doing in both my personal life as well as in Psychotropic, and then come back to with a fresh mind and fresh eyes. I'll be saying more about this development and the reasons for the decision I've made, as well as just to reflect on the episodes itself and the podcast in general. But for the time being, this is all I got, guys. So with that in mind, I'm going to be keeping up the website for the next 2 to 4 weeks. But after that, I'm going to be taking it down. So if you'd like to get a hold of me and share a story, potentially be on one of the final episodes of Psychotropic, for the time being, you can get a hold of me via the website, psychotropicpodcast.com. But eventually, the only way you'll be able to reach me is through the Psychotropic email, which is psychotropicpodcast@hotmail.com. And by all means, if you have any questions or concerns, comments, suggestions, definitely reach out. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this or anything else. Lastly, with the removal of the website, I'll also be taking down the patron program. There's just no sense in asking for money for a show that is not going to continue releasing episodes. So, to all of my patrons, thank you so much for your support. I'll be saying that again before the 50th episode, but thank you. So, having said all that, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for listening, everybody.
So me and my friend Phil, we used to do a lot of drugs together. Hallucinogens. It started with just smoking pot, but then when the hallucinogens came, it'd be acid. Started with the acid, but then we'd get the shrooms, and so I don't know. This is probably a few years of doing stuff, together, and we would probably get a quarter. This is what our normal thing would get, a quarter. We'd split it. So we'd probably each eating an eighth, which is kind of a lot.
Psychotropic presents Pops.
We would eat the whole eighth. He ate his eighth, I ate mine. Within 5 minutes, I should say that we're hanging out in his room. It was a typical thing to hang out at his house. It was like the safe house. Parents kind of let loose on him, so it was like a free for all, really. So within the first like 5-10 minutes of ingesting the shrooms, he's like completely fucked up. I feel absolutely nothing. 30 minutes goes by, he's just regular fucked up Phil, kind of talking, and then he's like, another 10 minutes goes by, and then he's like way too fucked up Phil. And watching him light a cigarette in his room, and he's smoking a cigarette, and I'm thinking to myself, like, all this shit's going down. This happened probably within an hour. And I'm thinking, he's going to eat that. And sure as shit, he eats the lit cigarette, chews it up, the whole thing. And I'm like, what the fuck? And he's like, I'm really fucked up. And I'm like, yep, this is fucked up. I'm like, I'm not even feeling anything, and you're already like wasted. Like, what's going on? I give him a glass of water, and he starts to freak out a little bit more, spills the water, and then he starts basically rolling around in the puddle of water, and just like totally going nuts. And it's like, it keeps transversing from him being just normally wasted on hallucinogens to being a little too fucked up, and then just being like way too fucked up. And then he like jumped into his bed, and he started to have like this strange look in his eye. And it was like, he was looking at me like he wanted to kill me. And he would like go into crying and sobbing. At this point, I'm starting to feel the shrooms, but not like him. I don't think I had visuals. Maybe I just felt like a body high. And so I asked him, do you need help? And he's like, yeah, I need help. And I'm like, well, I'm not calling your parents. And I'm like, I'm not calling an ambulance, so I don't know what to do. And he's like, I need help. You need to get out. And he's like, he keeps looking at me with that strange look. And it was just so weird. I thought he wanted to kill me, so I was like, all right. At this point, like, going back to my house being fucked up is really not an option. I think at this point it was probably like 12 o'clock at night. We probably ate. So a few hours went by. Basically, I felt like I should leave, so I left, went home, and I'm just hanging out in my room. About 4 o'clock in the morning, I had my own, my mom bought me my own phone line for my birthday one year. So when people, this is before cell phones, kind of, I just didn't have the money to buy one, I guess. It was like the Nokias. So 4 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call from his mom. She's like, what did you guys take? And right off the bat, I was like, oh, we did this. We took a quarter of shrooms and we split it. It was like total normal. I don't understand. Like, I'm not even really wasted. And I was like, what's going on with him? And she's like, well, he apparently, after I left, he got naked and ran out into the street. He had like a wooden cane in his room that he had broken in half, and he tried to put it under his neck in hopes that his parents would try and find him and run him over, I guess. He told me this because after all this happened the next day, we met up and had breakfast. But so I guess that happened, and she said that she was in her room with her Phil's younger brother. I forget his age at the time. Kindergarten age, 5, 6, somewhere around there. And they were barricaded in the master bedroom, and he was trying to break in, apparently. They were just screaming at him, telling him to get in his room. They finally got him into his room and got him to lay in his bed. He was just butt naked. His father sitting next to his bed, watching him the whole night. None of that ever happened to me. I thought to see that happen is completely insane. And then to boot, the next day we go out to breakfast, and the kid is just completely different. It's like, I mean, obviously it's the next day, but it looked like he was just fried, and kind of grew apart from that point on. And he stopped smoking weed, stopped doing hallucinogens, and started doing harder things. I guess like meth. Been doing it for many, many years from what I know now. And it's just strange how, hearing the stories of hallucinogens affecting people positively. But this story, to me, it seemed like it completely changed the kid.
Could you describe your relationship with him and how it evolved or devolved, however you want to put it, after this shroom trip?
So like you want to talk about before and then after?
Well, that's ultimately what I'm going to be getting to. But for this part right here, I want to talk about after. I want to talk
Okay.
about, so you went out to breakfast with him and he was completely changed. But after that, could you describe how your guys' relationship devolved?
Um, I guess it was more of we would hang out, but it was just awkward. And I don't remember. I mean, obviously we hung out the next day. It's kind of what we did. We'd hang out and be cracked out on drugs and just hang out and chill all day. Um, but it was just strange. And I believe that day we went back to his house, smoked, and he was like, I don't think I want to do anything anymore, you know? And, I don't know. That's kind of all I remember. And so this was probably 20 years ago since that's happened, maybe even longer. Um, and now, like this is still living in Arizona at the time before I moved away, and it's still during, I guess you would say, senior year, just after high school, kind of time. Um, he was hanging out with other friends. Basically, they would just got into other drugs, I guess, and it seemed like they were doing coke in the bathroom behind me. My parents used to do it all the time, so them going to the bathroom and coming back with a runny nose, and then the other one going, it was obvious. So I stopped hanging around them, and then I guess the coke turned to meth, and that's basically stopped hanging out with both of them and just kind of doing my own thing.
What was the last time you remember seeing him?
Actually, I got married to my wife, and we got married in Massachusetts. We had a reception for people who couldn't come from Arizona, and we rented this house. And for some reason, his parents came because I'm friends with his older brother and friends with his cousins, I guess, too, at the time. So they came over, and he just happened to come over too. So it was really the last time I seen him. And he had a kid with somebody, brought the kid over. It was still awkward. And
What was awkward about it? What makes your interactions with him after the fact awkward?
uh, because it's like the kid hasn't moved on. Being almost 40 years old and having moved on and got a career. Uh, the so-called air quotes American dream. House and kids, bills, all that. But him still living at home, still doing the same things he did in high school. Hearing from his brother, which is he's almost 40 years old doing the same shit, just nuts.
I see. Do you attribute his lack of progress with that night you guys did mushrooms together in any way?
I feel like it was. I do. But basically, from that night on, we just lost connection and grew further and further apart. So it was, I guess it's easy to assume that.
Did he ever describe why he didn't want to smoke weed or do mushrooms anymore?
Um, if he did, I don't. remember because it was, a hazy time, I would say. So this is a time when I'm doing, having a vial of acid and doing acid every day. So doing anything and everything, basically.
Yeah, it was just kind of like foggy. It's a foggy time.
It is like high school, the last year of high school, and a couple of years before college, during college, and then the year before college. It's basically just partying once a week, going to a rave. That's basically what it was.
How did you meet Phil?
I met him so junior high, basically. Seeing the kid at junior high, and then one day we just ended up meeting up, and that's basically, hanging out after school, smoking weed, going to Toys R Us, playing the free video games, kind of thing. So we used to play. He used to have Legos, like tons of Legos, and he had this giant Lego city above his bed, and we used to hang out, listen to Primus, build trains, and smash them into each other. It's for hours.
What did you like about him?
I guess it was a place that I could go to because I couldn't smoke weed at my house. So it was for me, he was the kid that you could do that. You can go to his house instead of going to the park. So
I see. So was he more? He was kind of like he was a means to do things that you weren't allowed to do at your parents' house.
Yeah, I mean, it was my parents. My mom was never like, you can't have anyone over. So when I had people over, it was when she was never home, because it was just awkward when she was home. So,
I mean, personality-wise, did you guys kind of connect? Was there attributes about him that you were attracted to?
Yeah, I think he was like the outlaw, the cool kid. Like, that's how I saw it. It was like, he's like the kid that gets into trouble. It's like, I like to get into trouble. Let's do that. We used to go and get into all kinds of trouble. The things that we used to do are things that if you got caught now, you would be in jail for the rest of your life. Like, it's different time, different era, basically. Like, nothing, just blowing shit up and stuff like that.
Could you describe a positive drug experience that you had with Phil?
Oh, I don't know. It's the way that you say it, like a positive drug experience. I guess that one in particular, besides the other one, the other story I wanted to tell you was not positive, but the rest of them, they were all, for the most part, fun experiences. We used to go camping for 3-4 nights, and it was just acid and pot, hanging out in the woods against a cliff, watching the trees dance, learning about the earth is how we looked at it. I would always watch trees and see the patterns of the tree and learn the patterns. That's what I remember. That was like my big thing. I would always like to have conversations. Phil would be more into like visual, like just looking like I don't know. I was more of a talker, I guess. That's what a lot of my friends used to say. I used to draw, change things. A lot of the stories you hear people say you're not supposed to take shrooms and look in the mirror. And I love doing that. Go to old man, go to werewolf, go back to normal. Strange.
What did Phil like to do when he was high?
Like, basically just like sit there, and like smoke a cigarette, maybe draw, play Legos if he could. He would get like really like body drunk too with it. It was weird. That a lot of the times that's what I remember.
What does body drunk mean? What does that mean?
Like more like well, we would call it body high. Um, he would just get like it was almost like when you peak, but he would just be peaking all the time. And maybe he was. I don't know.
I see. So it's really interesting. Like the picture that I'm painting, basically, like while you're talking, I'm kind of doing two things at once. I have to listen to your story and then have things clarified if needed, and then kind of see where it goes. And then at the same time, I'm kind of thinking about how I'm going to organize it into this
Yep.
episode, right? And the way that I see it being organized is, you meet Phil, how you met him, why you guys kind of clicked, how you guys took substances together, like out
Yep.
in the woods or whatever. He liked to draw or just sit there, smoke cigarettes, and then eventually lead up into this bad trip, and then
Yep.
the eventual fall, I guess you would call it. And so just to kind of like keep you on this, like on the same page as I am, like what you're telling me, like one, it's really amazing, but two, it's interesting like how there are these common themes. Like he ate a cigarette, but at the same time with previous trips, he just like to kind of sit there and smoke his cigarette, you know.
Yep.
uh there's this kind of funny theme about that you had just mentioned about staring at yourself in the mirror and going from old man to werewolf and then back to normal. That
Yep.
basically this phase change that's taking place, and then this final story of this phase change that you witnessed that never seemed to really go back to normal, you know?
Yep.
That's really interesting. And then you said you have one more story?
Yeah, I mean, and Phil was a part of it. This was like the rave scene. So we're going to raves every time, every chance we can get, and a lot of the ones in Arizona, they weren't even called raves. It was just a party, but they were illegal. You would have to go to a parking lot and meet somebody. They would give you a flyer, and that flyer would have a map, and that map you would have to drive somewhere else. And it'd be like another checkpoint, and then they would give you another map, and then that map would take you to the party. And this was a way to get rid of cops, I guess, or to weed out people. But you'd get to the party, basically the first parking lot was that's your ticket you pay, and it gets you to the next zone, and these parties were sometimes out in the woods. They were in, abandoned factories in Arizona, but there was a couple of them that were out in near Maricopa behind a mountain, basically, just off the highway, like an hour or so off the highway, but nothing around. And you basically drive up to this mountain and park, and then it's just the party, just the fucking techno music, and it's just this extravaganza lights. And when you're walking in this hill, being from Arizona, a lot of people would call this a mountain, but in Arizona it's a hill. It's big. So we're all there, the normal guys. It was about 5 or 6 of us that we always went to parties with. Sometimes we would bring drugs. A lot of the times we would go just to get the drugs. Some of the people we were with were selling this stuff called space, is what we called it, which it was DXM. I believe the person was getting it out of Robitussin, but they were selling it in these little capsules. So we would take those every once in a while. I guess RoboTrip is what they call it, but it was intense. So you take it, your stomach would be all fucked up for like a half an hour, and then you would be what we called in orbit. We'd be in space. And so you'd be like fucked up tripping for a few hours, and then you would go to bed and sleep really fucking good. And then the person we were getting it from, sometimes you would have the shits the next day and sometimes you wouldn't. So the girl that was selling it told us that the guy was cutting it with baby laxative sometimes. I was like, oh, that makes sense. So this one time at this desert party, she's selling the pills, and I take ecstasy, and she gives me one of those, and I pop the pill. And I think Phil did shrooms, maybe shrooms and acid with him and his cousin, and we're like, let's go hike up this mountain, smoke a bowl. All right, so we climb up the mountain. Music's going. Get up there, we smoke a bowl, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta go down. They're like, why? I'm like, because the drugs are kicking in, and if I stay up here, I'm gonna be stuck up here all night. So go down, shit's hitting hard, fucking partying. I think I was okay, fucked up for like an hour. Then I just started. It's been probably 22, 23. It's been a long time since this has happened, and since we've been talking, I've been trying to recall the story to refresh myself about it better, because I haven't thought about it in years. So as I'm getting really fucked up, I tell my group of friends, like, all right, let's go sit down. So we go just outside the party. There's no fences or anything. It's just in the middle of the desert. We go sit in a wash. And for some reason I want to say we sat on a blanket. I don't know if that's true or not. So we're sitting in the wash. I'm sitting crisscross applesauce, as I would say now, as I learned from my kids. And I tell my friends that I need to, I say it in third person. I say, I'm going to go for a while. I'll be fine, but I need to focus on what's going to happen. And if I don't talk, it's okay. I'll be back in a little bit. Don't worry about me. And I basically just put my head between my legs, and I don't know if I was rocking, but I had my eyes closed and my arms kind of almost like in a fetal position, but sitting down. And I remember just like this wave of the feeling of the two drugs kicking in. And I've mixed drugs before, and I didn't think it was that big of a deal. It wasn't like I took two of each. I took one of each. This is coming from doing 10 hits of acid and doing whippets, nitrous oxide, while I'm peaking on top of it. So this was like, I guess, child's play, but maybe not. So the wave keeps coming over. I can hear my friends talking. I'm like I guess you could say I'm going in and out of consciousness, or what's reality and the reality I was in. There was no lights, pitch black, just completely dark. And I remember you would hear like the bass just kick in. And it's not like that's what was happening with the music, but that's just what was happening. That's just how my brain was hearing it. And then it would be the treble. Then it would be, it would go back and forth. It would be the bass and the treble. Then it would go away, and it would be just my friends talking. And then it would go back to the music. And then slowly but surely, all of the music came back. And I was fine. It was strange.
What were your friends doing while you were experiencing that?
I think some of them might have been trying to rub my back. And I remember them saying, "Oh, is he okay?" I think, and I interjected saying, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'll be back." But I'm saying my name. So, speaking in third person about it.
And Phil, he was part of this experience too. He was there?
Yes. And this was before. So, and I consider this this was me, I think, realizing that maybe not that I was going to overdose, but I could feel that what was about to happen was going to be way, way intense. And I needed to hunker down and take care of it. I had to get real mind strong, real fast. So.
where was Phil in all this? Was he just sitting next to you too?
Yeah, he was probably in the group. He might have been wandered off at the time. I don't know. I don't know how long I was like that. Maybe an hour or so.
Wow. That's really interesting that you had this experience where you took these drugs and then you felt yourself really starting to peak from them, and you innately knew that, okay, this is going to be kind of heavy. This is going to get heavy and I have to kind of chill out. Like, I need to hunker down and deal with this, as you said.
Yeah, because when there'd be times when I'd hang out with my friends and you'd let it get, like, you could let it get intense, and it would get intense for them, and they'd be like, oh, just gotta think happy thoughts. And it's like, well, what if you don't think happy thoughts? It's just like, well, let's just devour into this a little bit, and just test the water. It's almost like throwing a rock into a pond to see what kind of a wave it could make, because eventually the wave will stop and it'll go back to being smooth. That's how I looked at it.
This episode was produced by me, Philip Johnson. All songs used can be found in the description section of this episode. If you liked what you heard today, please rate and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to get a sneak peek at upcoming episodes of Psychotropic, you can do so by following Psychotropic on Instagram at Psychotropic Podcast, all one word. If you're interested in purchasing a t-shirt, you can do so through the website, psychotropicpodcast.com. Lastly, if you're interested in writing in and sharing a story, or giving feedback, or even just talking about something completely unrelated, you can do so either through the website, again, psychotropicpodcast.com, or you can get a hold of me at the Psychotropic Podcast email, psychotropicpodcast@hotmail.com. Even if you're just the slightest bit inclined to do so, definitely reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Having said all that, thanks for listening, everybody. I'll see you next time.